Candidate number 3. What do you think is the most important trait or characteristic of a Grand Lodge officer?
If I had to pick one overriding trait, it's kind of that nebulous thing called leadership. I know that there's a lot of administrative things that need to be done, and I know that there's a lot of day-to-day emails, communication. Certainly you can say there's a lot of different skills that come into that, and it includes things like communication and administration. But in the organizations that I've worked in, the ones that have been high functioning, the ones where I've felt fulfilled, the person that was leading them was not an administrator. They were not a middle manager. They were not, somebody who just said, well, what we need to do is we need to have the budget, and we need to have this. Those are all important things. And don't get me wrong, the business needs to be done. But at the end of the day, when you think back to the people in your life that you really looked up to, or think about past presidents, the ones, whichever aisle you're on, the ones that you thought were great and the ones that you didn't think were so great. Was it the fact that they passed more bills, or that they, didn't veto, or they signed some treaty? No, it was that they were great leaders. And they're on both sides of the aisle. I mean, in my lifetime, I can think of somebody, I can think of Ronald Reagan, I can think of Bill Clinton. And if you're on the other side of the aisle from either one of those, you might not like them. But I'll tell you what, in their own ways, they were great leaders. They were great communicators, and they projected a vision of where they thought the United States should go, and they projected their unique vision. That is what I think is probably the #1 trait for a Grand Lodge officer. They need to project where they believe Masonry in this jurisdiction should go and how we should get there, and inspire those in the lodges, the masters, the wardens in the lodges, to work towards those goals.
Candidate number 1, same question.
I think what is important is somebody who has good organizational skills, which encompasses a lot of attributes which my other colleague has already talked about. Somebody with administrative skills, somebody who can delegate, somebody who can lead. But you've got to be able to organize and get people to work with you. A good organizer goes out and he solicits help. He chooses the best. He listens to good people. Then he makes a decision. You needed an individual in Grand Lodge, the administrative side of it, that can make sound decisions based upon what is good for the organization and not their own personal desires. I think it's also beneficial for somebody to have some financial background, because it's become more relevant today that we need to run the fraternity like a business. There is the business side of it, and then we have the fraternity side of it. And again, this is why I believe we need to have the separation of the secretary and the treasurer, because you can have a treasurer that'll take care of the financial side of our organization. Then the secretary can work with the Grand Master to take care of the fraternal side of the organization, and you have the Grand Master sitting up on top. And if he's a good orchestrator, one who can conduct and lead by example, he'll get the other people to follow him. And he'll be able to hold those who are not doing their job accountable and not be afraid to replace them. You got to be able to make decisions based on sound judgment, what you know to be right, and then stand behind it and say, hey, based on what I knew, what I saw, this is the decision I made. You got to be able to lead by example. When you lead by example and you show people what you're about, and that you go out and you solicit them, then I believe people will follow you and they'll understand where you're coming from. Thank you.
Candidate number 2, same question.
I think when you talk about leadership, it's almost impossible to really talk about it in only 3 minutes. An attribute of leadership that I feel is critical is, call it critical thinking, if you will, communication. I've been a Better Business Bureau arbitrator for more than 20 years. And as part of the arbitration process, both parties must agree to an agreement to arbitrate, which sets the limits on what the arbitrator can do in reaching a decision, what they listen to, what they do. And you learn as an arbitrator and as an attorney to listen to both parties, whatever their evidence is, whatever witnesses they have, and try to come up with a common ground if you can reach it, but to take the input that you have and use it in an intelligent way to reach a decision. Now, arbitration is exactly that. It's arbitrary. When the arbitrator reaches a decision in the agreement to arbitrate, that's the decision. But it's a poor arbitrator that doesn't listen to both parties to see if the dispute being arbitrated the parties can reach an agreement before that final decision is made that they can both live with. In a sense, the agreement to arbitrate is our Washington Masonic Code. And as leaders of the fraternity, we need to be able to use that document and use it in a way that in any time a dispute of any sort or a quote-unquote problem arises, that we can listen to all the information that we have and use the resources that we have, including committees, past grand masters, past masters, past district deputies, to try to get as clear a picture of what the issue is and then reach that decision. If you can reach it with consensus, then you reach it with consensus. But you don't, again, you're not an arbitrator, and it should not be an arbitrary decision in almost any case. Leadership is a lot of things, not least of which encouraging members to work together to reach resolution.